Hello and welcome back to TNN's coverage of the world's 9 best fantasy football players league. I'm your host, and this is what we have for you this week. The 2023 season of the world's 9 best fantasy football players kicked off last week, and teams are already kicking into high gear. While some teams are looking ahead to future wins, some teams are left thinking about what might have been. There are some big Week 1 injuries, and TNN sends it out now to the team that has very clearly been most affected by injuries this year. Yeah, the injuries came Week 1, and they definitely came in strong. SWAT team, look, some people may say that it was my, natural comeuppance for the past 3 years and just general cockiness that Aaron Rodgers went down Week 1 for the whole year. And I also lost Deontay Johnson for probably about a month or so. Jalen Petrie, coughing up blood, never great. And the SWAT team also lost very valuable contributor Evan Hull, who is going to be on IR. Things are not great out there for the SWAT team. And, I'd really like to propose, now that this directly affects me, that we increase the IR spots, because it really just is not fair to have all of these injuries and not be able to pick up the guys I need to really go out there and compete. So, me and Mike Visconti, standing in a strong alliance now, need to increase IR spots. I'd really like to recognize the effects that Week 1 has on people. I know that, well, it may fall disproportionately on me, of course. There are some other teams out there that are dealing with some injuries as well, notably JK, really tough for them. Cooper Kupp, JK Dobbins, just absolutely brutal to start the year. I can't think of any other teams that have really been hit with injuries at all. It's just, me and Joe, and that's pretty much it. As a matter of, league administrative business, I do have to report that I am still missing multiple payments from league members. So if you're a fan of the show and watching now, just a reminder, you can send $60 for the buy-in and the Survivor Pool buy-in to me. Send it to my Venmo. Do not mention fantasy football, otherwise I might get locked out of my account, and that would be very bad. And if you don't, I'm just going to have to name and shame next week. We are currently waiting for 4 people to still send me their money, so there's a good chance we'll be back next week. Wishing all the best of luck to people this week, and hopefully the injury bug stays away from everyone's teams. There will be no wheel spin for the Survivor Pool this week, but congratulations to the Texarkana Bandits, Blood, Sweat, and Beers, SWAT team, and Undefeated Never Lost for their divisional immunity in this upcoming week, based off of their Week 1 performance. And now, here is Danny Football with his picks for Week 2. Hey, what's up, guys? World's 9 best fantasy football players expert, Danny Football here, back with another week of expert predictions. Last week was all right for me, going 3-3, bring my total on the year to 3-3. It was a little bit of a weird week, Week 1, things are unpredictable. We're looking to get back on track and improve that record. But now, it's a new week, there's a new guest, and a new chance to beat the expert. So, guest, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me, Danny Football. It's Danny Storts here, offensive coordinator of the historic franchise Undefeated Never Lost. Excited to be the first non-commissioner guest for the year, and I'm excited to make some picks this week.
Yeah, Danny, great to have you here. I always love getting some UNL representation on the show. Of course, you're my favorite from that team. It's not a lot of stiff competition, but you've got the number 1 spot locked up, and great to have you here this week.
That's an honor. I'll tell Roberto Kraft that,
yeah.
And I'm going to be hearing from his people.
All right, first up, we have the Mental Brick Walls taking on Team M. Vanek. Brick Walls favored in this one at 56%. I honestly don't have too much to say about Team M. Vanek. They took the loss last week. I expect they're going to be taking a lot more throughout the season. Drake London, in particular, is someone I thought was probably going to be a decent contributor for this team. Really just did absolutely nothing. And I don't know if he's going to be able to bounce back at all this season. Luckily, though, for Team M. Vanek, they have Bijan Robinson, and the Falcons look content with just running the ball basically every single play. So there's a little bit of upside there for them. For the Brick Walls, I think this is where their drafting strategy really starts to pay off. They got the win against JK last week, and now they've got 2 cupcakes in a row against Team M. Vanek, Team Big Chungus 22. I'm going to go with the Brick Walls pretty easily in this one.
Yeah, Danny Football. I think that's the obvious pick this week. I have a few notes about Team M. Vanek. Actually, just one. Not two. 25%, over 25% of their week 1 points were produced by 2 players on their team. Bijan Robinson, good running back,
mm-hmm.
and their kicker.
Okay.
So we see where the potential that team has. They also had the lowest point total for week 1 expected.
Yeah.
I expect them to keep up that trend in week 2. So not a lot to say for Team M. Vanek. On the mental brick walls side, I agree with all your assessment. They had the 3rd highest point total in week 1. They have a star wide receiver, Michael Pittman.
Yeah.
I don't know of any team that would trade him away. He's a great addition to any roster.
Yeah, great locker room guy too.
Yeah. And they are in a pretty weak division, as you alluded to, with their cupcake matches coming up. I expect them to do pretty well this season as a whole, make a good playoff push. So I'm going with the mental brick walls this week.
I think that's a good pick. And we love coming in with the analytics right off the bat. 25%. That's a great Team M. Vanek stat right there. All right, next up we have the Judon Noodles taking on Ham and Throw. The Nudes favored in this one at 60%. Danny, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, the Judon Noodles. I like his roster. I like what Timmy's done with that team. I think he's got some good potential. There's some guys on that team that excite me. I think his week 1 performance was a little bit of an underperforming. Getting the week 1 jitters out. I expect them to return a little stronger this week. Team Ham and Throw, on the other hand, they got really lucky week 1.
Yeah.
Very lucky. They went up against Jacob in Blood, Sweat, and Beers, I believe.
Yes.
Thank you. And, they barely squeaked out that win. And Jacob, had a few misses on his roster. Any one of those would have led him to victory. The only other note I have about Team Ham and Throw is that they have Anthony Richardson.
And, yes, they do.
He is a player. So there's that. But I expect them to return to their historic form in week 2. And I expect Judon Noodles to pull out the win here.
I like that pick. My producers are telling me that Ham and Throw actually played Bart Harley, Jarvis Landry in week 1. So little live correction there. I
was going to say, I thought that the division that was the wrong division on that.
Yeah, it takes the expert to a little bit of time to get caught up to these new divisions. They're all still unnamed, which does not help with remembering who's in what division. But
yeah, we'll chalk that mistake up to the names on that division.
Yeah, it was definitely
but
the
my
name.
point still stands that he barely squeaked out that win, and yeah,
we would never want to improperly attribute a loss to Ham and Throw, to the great Blood, Sweat, and Beers team run by, very well respected owner Jacob.
That's true. One of the most historic franchises in the most historic division in the most historic league.
Absolutely. As far as this matchup, Nudes versus Ham and Throw, Judon Noodles really got off on the wrong foot last week. After their championship run, you really don't want to come out and lose week 1 after losing the championship the year before. Lamar did not do much. I think Garrett Wilson's going to take a big step back in my personal rankings now that Aaron Rodgers is out. He's got to rely on Zach Wilson again. Luckily for them, though, they have to go up against a very nice, very easy ham and throw team this week. I am very interested to see Visconti run his lineup of scrubs and waiver wire pickups out there this week. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch. They were entirely carried by their defense last week, and I'm expecting a major regression here and throughout the rest of the season. Ham and throw, probably, look, owner Mike Visconti will talk a big game, and you know he thinks his team is good right now. And I think it's going to be very, very enjoyable to watch this team come crashing back down to earth throughout the course of the season. I'm going with the Judon Noodles in this one.
Great pick, Danny Football. But real quick before we move on,
of course,
how many weeks do you think until Ham and Throw picks up Ian Book off the waiver wires and has to start him for Anthony Richardson?
I'll give him a couple. You know, Book's gotta go and learn the Belichick system, but he's coming for Mac's job for sure. Next up, we have JK. We're still Mahorny versus Team Big Chungus 22. JK favored here at 54%. JK may have had one of the worst starts to the season with injuries. They lost both Cooper Kupp, who's placed on IR before the season, and J.K. Dobbins, who had that Achilles injury in week 1. I think they probably cursed him with the team name there. It's always a tough look to name your team after somebody. Never spells good things. Luckily, though, they have someone to fill in to their starting lineup in Brandon Cooks, who is a very valuable fantasy contributor and definitely not someone that I would ever want to drop from my team. It's just a huge mistake. Very, very valuable Brandon Cooks. Looking to the Chung guy, they got carried by a huge week from Tyreek Hill. I do not think he's going to be able to keep that pace up, but luckily for them, the Chung guy, they have an absolute murderer's row of talents behind him to pick up the slack in Rashee Rice, Kendrick Bourne, and Jonathan Mingo. So, you know, Mr. Big Chungus himself scorned TNN this week. He declined the invitation from the TNN producers to be on the show. So I really do not have much goodwill towards the Chung guy right now. I really do not want to pick them. And in fact, I'm not going to pick them. I'm going to go with JK in this one. I just like to say that Danny Stortz is a much better guest than Mr. Big Chungus himself could ever dream of being.
Well, thank you, Danny Football. You know, I'm really shocked to hear that Mr. Chungus would turn down the opportunity to be the first host or the first guest after the commissioner.
It truly is an honor.
It's such an honor. When I got the text, I leapt at the chance. I really had nothing more to say in terms of my analysis for this matchup. I have another advanced statistic for you here.
Okay.
Tyreek Hill, 22.7% of week 1 points for the Chung guy.
Wow.
How long do you think he can keep that up for?
Not too long.
I think that's it. I don't think, and like you said, there's not much depth behind him. There's not much depth on the team at all, really. I mean, he played Mike Vanek week 1, so you know that's always a chalk one up in W category when you play against Team M Vanek. But I think he's going to come crashing down to earth this week. And for JK, we're still Mahorny. I think this is a great week 2 matchup for them.
Yeah,
because it's a nice way to course correct. Started off the season a little rocky. They're going to right the ship with a big win against the Chung guy this week.
Next up, we have the Texarkana Bandits versus undefeated Never Lost. Bandits favored in this one at 62%. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
You know, as a fan of the show, longtime fan of the show, Danny Football, longtime fan. I know that you're high on the Bandits.
Oh, really? You got to be a real fan to know that.
Yeah. Yep. And that's kind of rubbed off on me a little bit through my years of watching you make your predictions, and really watching the Bandits rise as a darling of the league.
Yeah.
Um, and they are they are in one of the toughest divisions this year. They did put themselves there, but that's beside the point. Undefeated, never lost. On the other hand, historic franchise. I'm also a fan of them. Big fan.
Great
As
franchise.
great
Historic.
franchise, exactly. And as their offensive coordinator, I have a lot of expectations for his team, a lot of hope. We're going into this season looking to improve on our performance last season. Shouldn't be too hard, but we'll see. UNL, unfortunately, we played against the commissioner week 1. Some are saying it's rigged. I'm not. I'm a fan of the commissioner, fan of everything going on over there.
As
But
we all are here at TNN.
exactly. Yep. I think this is a bounce back week. UNL in the same tough division. That division has had 3 of the 5 top point scorers week 1.
Wow.
And some UNL may have been one of those teams. Some are saying.
They may have been.
Yeah. Texarkana Bandits also in that division. Unsure if they are one of those teams. I cannot confirm that. And we always hear from you, Danny Football, about how you're such a fan of the Bandits. But if you ever go to the comment section on any of these videos, you will see scores of fans for UNL.
True.
And that is where the real money is. I'm going with the grassroots. I'm going with the comment section. I'm going with UNL this week.
I really like that. That's a bold pick here. Undefeated, never lost is actually one of the more interesting teams for me to watch this year. We get to see if the tanking experiment from the past few years starts to pay off after all those draft picks. They had a real stinker of a performance last week, but
Rigged.
luckily and kind of unluckily for them, they are in the best division in the league, and they got carried to survivor pool safety this week, so can chalk one up as a win in the undefeated never lost column. Looking to the Bandits, look, fans of the show will know that I am high on the Bandits. Commissioner Tooch made a fantastic point when he was my honorable guest last week, saying there's not been nearly enough Trayvon Walker content, and I really took this to heart. I agree. And I really want to focus and feature Trayvon Walker. This guy is an absolute beast. If you look at the tape, it is insane. And he came out the gates on fire last week. He put up 15 points, including 1 sack. And that is just perfection. That's exactly what you want out of your defensive players week 1. But something that really isn't being talked about on this show is the Bandits' scouting department. This is a team that got Puka round 5 of last year's rookie draft, this most recent year, this summer. He was the biggest waiver wire pickup of week 1, and the Bandits already had him on their roster. You got to really talk about this. This team just has an eye for talent. If this team had the kind of draft capital that Undefeated Never Lost has wasted, squandered over the past couple of years, we would easily be talking about a Bandits three-peat at this point, and they would be well on their way to a 4th consecutive championship this year. Really, this one, completely one-sided, no doubt in my mind. Bandits all the way, getting the win in this matchup.
I don't appreciate some of those comments, but we'll leave it at that.
Moving on, we have the SWAT team taking on Blood, Sweat, and Beers. SWAT favored in this one at 56%. This is another interesting matchup, a team on the decline and a team that really wants to tank. I'm going to let the viewers at home figure out which team is which in this scenario. The SWAT team, they really got roughed up last week with the injuries. We're going to have to see how they fare the rest of the year with a a rotating cast of clowns with Danny Dimes, Sam Howell, and Kenny Pickett rolling out there at quarterback. But Blood, Sweat, and Beers, they also have not escaped some major questions after week one. They might have a real running back problem on their hands. Cam Akers was extremely inefficient. Is probably going to be losing some touches here on forward. Antonio Gibson got negative points last week. And Alvin Kamara obviously still suspended for 2 more weeks. I am really surprised that this Blood, Sweat, and Beers team and historic owner Jacob have not gone out and tried to make a move for a guy to really shore up their flex spot. You just got to think that, like some young wide receiver would be a really good fit for this team. Until they remove some of that uncertainty with their starting lineup, I've got to go with the SWAT team in this one.
I think that's a good pick, Danny Football. The SWAT team was the opponent of UNL week one. It's always a tough matchup when you go up against them.
Sure.
Understandable why there were some injuries on your side or on Commissioner's side of the ball. But it was a tough win that you pulled out against us. That Commissioner pulled out against us. Sorry, excuse me.
I did not pull out any wins.
Yep. Also, the SWAT team is in the toughest division in the league, which I believe is the only case that the league is not rigged by the Commissioner. Really, the only case that I can think of. On Blood, Sweat, and Beers side, they had an insane potential week one with I think it was like 290 max points for.
Yeah.
But they were
by far the highest.
The least efficient manager in the league. Which makes you think, it puts some question marks in the owner's suite there. They have a lot of defensive talent, but like you touched on, the offensive talent not quite there.
They're not sending their best out on offense.
They're not sending their best. I was surprised to see. I think it was the Washington Commanders. RB3 was one of their starting running backs in the lineup right now.
Antonio Gibson.
Yeah,
not great.
Not great at all. So that doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence. And any team that can beat undefeated, never lost, has got to be a pretty strong team. So I think for that reason, I'm going to go with the SWAT team in this one.
Finally, we have our marquee matchup of the week: Bart Harley, Jarvis Landry taking on Coochie Gang. Who favored here at 52%? Who do you like in this matchup?
This is I think this is going to be a close one. Obviously, TNN producers would put this as the marquee matchup because I think it's going to be the game to watch. It's going to be a nail biter. For Bart Harley, Jarvis Landry, they were the most efficient manager week one. They quite efficient, but it makes you think, is that a sign that they have a bad bench?
Yeah.
Not a very deep team. They don't have many tough decisions to make week to week. So, if some of their starters don't put up points, they don't really have anything to fall back on. For the Coochie Gang, I don't really have a lot to say about this team. This is not my not my best prepared game. I'm really waiting on owner Kevin Moss to make his mark on this team. Start turn the ship around, having them make some improvements. I think this game is really it's going to be a toss up, but I'm gonna give the edge this week to Coochie Gang.
Wow. Okay. All right. I like that pick there. It's not a great marquee matchup. Interestingly, there are no matchups this week between two teams that both won last week or two teams that both lost. Every single matchup is between a team that is 1-0 versus a team that is 0-1, which is just very bizarre. I would love to know the odds of that happening. This is the marquee matchup, though, because I and all the TNN producers here think it's going to be very close and also a real bellwether for both of these teams throughout the season. Bart Harley, they could go into panic mode if they start the year out 0-2. It's not impossible to come back at that point, but you'll definitely need to make some adjustments. And it'll be interesting to see what they would do in that scenario. The Coochie Gang, also a team to watch this year. They had Calvin Ridley come out and just have a huge performance last week. He looked really great. Really great addition to this team that they did not have last year. And this was a playoff team last year. So having that extra wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 range guy is going to be huge for them. I'm going to be looking to see how things shake out over the next couple of weeks, see if they make another D-Hop-esque trade, getting closer to the deadline to really push them over the top. But this one, like we said, is going to be very close. I was actually really happy to hear that you called this one a toss-up, because that's exactly what I was thinking here. It's time for our first TNN coin flip of the year. We've got the lucky coin right here. We're going to go heads for Bart Harley and tails for the Coochie Gang. This is going to be very important here. It could really make a difference between Danny and the expert Danny Football here. So heads for Bart Harley, tails for Coochie Gang. Here we go. And it is tails. Hold that up to the camera. It is tails. We're going with Coochie Gang this week.
Danny Football, it's funny because on my notes for this week, right there, terrible handwriting, but I wrote down coin flip game.
Great minds think alike on this one.
Some are calling me the expert in training, expert junior. So I don't know.
I have been looking for a protege. So if you beat the expert, it might be your time.
Well, I look forward to maybe being the expert this week.
Although I would like to point out, Danny, I believe you do have the worst record picking against the expert of any guest who has been on the show. I'll check the stats on that one, but I'm pretty sure you've had the worst record.
Some of my past performances may not have been the best. I might not be the most in tune with what's happening in the league, but we still have fun, Danny Football.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about.
Exactly. And what else it's all about?
What?
Smashing that like button, hitting subscribe, ringing that bell, and going down to the comments section and cheering on the historic undefeated, never lost franchise.
Be sure to comment down below. Producers of TNN will be down in the comments for the first hour or two after every show, responding to comments. So
you got to ring that bell to make sure.
You got to ring the bell. You got to make sure you're the first ones there watching us every single week. Yeah, all right, exactly. Danny. Well, thank you so much for being on this week. I'm wishing you all the best of luck with your picks. Of course, not as good as me. Can't beat the expert, but thank you for being on. It's been great having you, and wishing you all the best of luck this season.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Danny Football. It's been a real pleasure. And I look forward to seeing more TNN content in the weeks to come.
Loyal fan of the show right there.
And thank you, Danny Football and guest Danny, for those great picks. That's all we have for you this time. Be sure to tune in next week to see how things shook out. I'm your host, and this has been TNN.